To remove the access panel, first loosen the thumb screw at the rear of the panel. Grasp the panel on the rear of the panel and pull slightly to the rear before pulling up on the back of the panel. Remove the panel from the unit. The access panel has several tabs on its side. And leading edges, which fit into slots and under a lip on the PC. There is also a small slot on the rear of the panel that a lock slot on the PC slides into. To reattach the panel, align the tabs on the panel over the corresponding slots on the PC. Slide the panel forward until the lock slot at the rear of the PC is fully through the small slot on the rear of the panel. Tighten the thumb screw to secure the panel. To remove the optical drive, first remove the access panel. Detach the power and data cables from the optical drive. Press on the green drive release latch at the rear of the drive and slide the drive out the front of the unit. If you are installing a new optical drive, pull the green drive release latch off of the optical drive. Insert a straightened paper clip or other similar tool into the forced eject hole on the optical drive to eject the drive tray. Pry and push out on the tabs securing the bezel to the optical drive, and remove the bezel from the drive. The optical drive bezel has several tabs that fit into slots on the front of the optical drive. To install a new optical drive, press the old optical drive bezel onto the optical drive until the tabs are secured. There are two small pins on the green drive release latch that fit into two small holes on the side of the optical drive. Press the pins into their holes to secure the latch to the new optical drive. Slide the drive into its drive bay through the front of the PC until the green release latch snaps into place. Replace the power and data connectors to the rear of the drive. To remove an expansion card if present in the unit, first remove the access panel. Lift the latch for the expansion card's retaining bracket and swing the bracket out. Press on the latch for the PCI x16 slot on the motherboard if removing a card from the PCI x16 slot. Carefully pull out the expansion card. To replace an expansion card, carefully align and push the card into its slot on the motherboard until it is fully seated. Rotate the expansion card's retaining bracket back into place to secure the card. To remove a PS2 and serial port module if present in the unit, first remove the access panel. Lift the latch for the expansion card's retaining bracket and swing the bracket out. Detach the connector for the PS2 and serial port module from the motherboard and pull the module out of the unit. To replace a PS2 and serial port module, align the back slot edge of the module into its position at the rear of the unit. Reattach the connector to the motherboard. Rotate the expansion card's retaining bracket back into place to secure the module. To remove the front bezel, first remove the access panel. Unlatch the four top tabs of the front bezel and rotate the bezel away from the PC. Some units will have a dust filter bezel attached to the main bezel. To replace the main bezel or the dust filter bezel in these units, pry the two bezels apart until they separate. If installing a new dust filter bezel, press and snap the dust filter bezel onto the main bezel until all edges on the bezels are flush. The front bezel has 4 tabs with cutouts on the top that fit over small metal tabs on the PC. The front bezel also has 4 tabs on the bottom that fit into slots on the PC. To replace the front bezel, align the tabs on the bottom side of the bezel into their slots on the PC, then rotate the top of the bezel into position until the cutout tabs have snapped into place. To remove the drives cage for access to system components, first remove the access panel and the front bezel. Detach the connectors from the hard drive and the optical drive in the cage. Press on the side latch for the drives cage. Swing up the left side of the cage, feeding the hard drive connectors down through their access hole on the cage. Lift the right side of the cage off of the unit. The drives cage has a large and small tab on the right side that fit into slots on the PC. The drives cage also has a tab and a latch on the left side that fit into a slot and over a tab on the left side of the PC. To replace the drives cage, insert the tabs on the right side of the cage into their slots. Swing the left side of the drive cage down, pulling the hard drive connectors up through their access hole until the latch on the left side fits over its tab. Replace the connectors to the hard drive and optical drive. To remove the hard drive, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, and the drives cage. Note the power and data connectors are removed from the hard drive as part of the drives cage removal. Detach the 4 Torx 15 screws securing the hard drive to the drives cage. Note, the screws are in different locations for 3.5-inch and 2.5-inch hard drives. Slide the drive out of the cage. To install a new 3.5-inch hard drive, slide the drive spindle side up into the drives cage until the screw holes on the drive align with the screw holes marked A on the cage. Secure the drive to the cage with 4 Torx 15 screws. To install a new 2.5-inch hard drive, slide the drive into the drive cage until the screw holes on the drive align with the screw holes marked B on the drives cage. Secure the drive to the cage with 4 Torx 15 screws. Note that the 2 types of Torx 15 screws used for the 2 sizes of hard drives are different. The types of screw required for each size of hard drive are stenciled on the drive's cage. To remove the front EMI bracket, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, and the drives cage. Detach the front number 2 antenna connector from the wireless LAN board. Disengage the front antenna cable from the cable guides on the front EMI bracket. Slide the bracket up and remove it from the unit. The front EMI bracket has 2 tabs, one on each side, that slide into small slots on the chassis. To replace the front EMI bracket, slide the bracket straight down until the tabs are inserted into their slots. Route the front antenna cable back into the cable guides on the front EMI bracket. Reconnect the front antenna cable to the wireless LAN board. To remove the power supply, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, and the drives cage. Free the power supply connector from the guides on the fan duct. Detach all power supply connectors to the motherboard. Free the power supply connectors from the cable guide near the power supply. Detach the 4 Torx 15 screws that connect the power supply to the PC. Press the latch at the inside edge of the power supply in the unit and slide the power supply into the PC before fully removing it from the unit. There is a slot on the side of the power supply that slides over a large tab on the side wall of the chassis. To replace the power supply, align the power supply slot slightly behind the chassis tab, then slide the power supply back until it locks into place next to the latch. Reattach the 4 Torx 15 screws at the rear of the chassis to secure the power supply to the chassis. Replace the power supply connectors into their cable guide on the chassis wall. Reconnect all power supply connectors to the motherboard. Secure the far side power connector into its cable guides on the fan duct. To remove the SD card reader if present in the unit, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, and the drives cage. Detach the SD card reader connector from the motherboard. Detach the Torx 15 screws securing the SD card reader to the front of the unit. Pull the reader out from inside the unit. There are 2 locator pegs on the SD card reader that fit into small holes at the front of the chassis. To replace the SD card reader, align the pegs into their holes. Secure the reader to the front of the unit with its Torx 15 screw. Reattach the SD card reader connector to the motherboard. To remove the speaker, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, and the drives cage. Detach the speaker connector to the motherboard. Free the speaker connector from the cable guide on the bottom of the PC. Remove the single Phillips number 1 screw at the front of the PC that secures the speaker to the front of the PC. Slide the speaker to the side and pull the speaker out of the unit. There are small metal guides on the front inside of the PC for correct alignment of the speaker. To replace the speaker, slide the speaker into its guides, aligning the screw hole on the speaker with the screw hole on the chassis. Replace the Phillips number 1 screw at the front of the unit to secure the speaker to the unit. Replace the speaker connector into its guide on the bottom of the chassis. Reconnect the speaker to the motherboard. To remove the fan duct, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, and the drives cage. Free the power supply connector from the cable guides on the side and top of the fan duct. Pull out on the 2 retaining tabs for the fan duct and pull the fan duct out of the PC. There are 2 small ledges on the inside of the fan duct that rest under the top edge of the heatsink. To replace the fan duct, align the fan duct approximately into place. Pull out on the retaining tabs for the fan duct and press the fan duct down until the tabs snap into place over the edge of the heatsink. Replace the power supply connector into the cable guides on the side and top of the fan duct. Route the hood sensor cable back into its guides on the fan duct. To remove the heatsink, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, the drives cage, and the fan duct. Detach the heatsink connector to the motherboard. Loosen the 4 captured Torx 15 screws for the heatsink, and gently pull the heatsink out of the PC. Before replacing the heatsink into the system, first clean off the old thermal grease from the microprocessor. Clean the grease from the heatsink if you are replacing the same heatsink into the system. Apply new thermal grease or a thermal pad to the microprocessor. Align the 4 screws of the heatsink over the 4 screw holes on the motherboard. Tighten the 4 Torx 15 heatsink screws. Replace the heatsink connector to the motherboard. To remove the wireless LAN board, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, and the drives cage. Carefully snap off the antenna connectors from the wireless LAN board. Detach the Phillips number 1 screw securing the wireless LAN board in place. The board will pop up. Remove the board. The wireless LAN board has a notch offset from the center that aligns over a key in its motherboard socket. To replace the wireless LAN board, angle the board into its motherboard socket at a 30-degree angle and press down. Hold it down while replacing the screw. Replace the antenna connectors to the board. The antenna connectors are labeled 1 and 2 and should be connected to the corresponding 1 and 2 labeled ports on the wireless LAN board. To remove the wireless LAN antennas, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, and the drives cage. Carefully snap off the antennas from the wireless LAN board. Remove the rear antenna from the small cable tunnel next to the motherboard. Remove the rear antenna cable from the cable guide on the inside rear wall of the PC. Squeeze the bottom side tabs of the rear antenna cover to release the bottom of the cover and pull the cover off of the unit. Detach the Phillips No. 1 screw for the rear antenna. Pry the antenna off of the rear of the unit and pull its cable out the rear of the unit. Remove the front antenna from its cable guides on the front EMI bracket. Pull the front antenna cable out to the front of the unit through its access hole. Detach the Phillips No. 1 screw for the front antenna and pry the front antenna off of the unit. Each antenna has a small hole that fits over a small locator peg on the front or rear of the PC. To replace the front antenna, align the hole on the antenna over its alignment peg and press the antenna adhesive onto the chassis. Secure the front antenna with its Phillips No. 1 screw. Pass the front antenna cable back into the unit through its access hole. Route the front antenna cable back into the cable guides on the front EMI bracket. Feed the rear antenna in through its access hole at the rear of the unit. Align its hole over its peg and press onto the chassis. Secure the rear antenna with its Phillips No. 1 screw. The rear antenna cover has two small hooked tabs on the bottom sides and two tabs on the top sides that fit into slots on the rear of the unit. To replace the cover, insert the two top tabs into their slots, then press the bottom of the cover until the bottom tabs have snapped into place. Replace the rear antenna into the cable guide on the rear inside wall of the PC. Align the rear antenna cable into the small cable tunnel next to the motherboard. Replace the antennas to the wireless LAN board. The antenna connectors are labeled 1 and 2 and should be connected to the corresponding 1 and 2 labeled ports on the wireless LAN board. To replace system memory, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, and the drives cage. Simultaneously push down on the clips on either side of the DDR4 DIMM socket to release the memory module. Carefully pull out the memory module. There is one notch on the bottom of every DDR4 DIMM module, offset from the center, that fits over a tab in the DDR4 DIMM memory socket. When installing DDR4 DIMMs, align the notch on the module with the tab in the socket. Press the module into the socket until the clips on both sides of the socket lock into place. To remove the CPU, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, the drives cage, the fan duct, and the heatsink. Press down to release the CPU load lever from its retention tab, and pull the load lever and load plate away from the socket. Identify pin 1 on the socket by the mark on the corner of the socket stencil. Line up the pin 1 corner of the Intel CPU removal replacement tool over the socket. Press down on the plunger of the removal tool to pick up the CPU from the socket and remove the tool and the CPU from the motherboard. To replace the CPU, first identify pin 1 position on the microprocessor by noting the yellow mark on the corner of the chip assembly. Make sure the Intel CPU staging tool side pins are set to the correct socket type for the CPU. For this unit, it is LGA1151. Place the CPU into the Intel CPU staging tool. When correctly inserted, the small notches on the side of the CPU should align over the side pins on the staging tool. Place the removal replacement tool over the stage, lining up the pin 1 triangles on each tool. Press down on the removal replacement tool to pick the CPU up from the stage. Align the removal replacement tool again to pin 1 on the motherboard CPU socket. Press the plunger on the removal replacement tool to release the CPU into the socket. Swing the load plate down. Lock the load lever under its retaining tab to secure the microprocessor into place. CMOS factory settings should be restored as a first step before replacing the system motherboard. To restore CMOS factory settings, first remove the access panel. Remove the battery from the motherboard. Wait 30 seconds. Replace the battery to the motherboard. CMOS factory settings are now reset. Note that you will now need to enter System BIOS and reset the clock in BIOS after this procedure. To remove the motherboard, first remove the access panel, the front bezel, the drives cage, and the fan duct. Remove any expansion cards or the PS2 and serial port module if installed in the unit. Remove system memory, the wireless LAN board, the SD card reader if installed in the unit, the front EMI bracket, the heatsink, and the CPU. When removing the CPU, install a socket cover on the load plate window before replacing the load plate over the socket. Detach all system connectors to the motherboard. Remove the 8 Torx 15 screws that attach the motherboard to the PC. Tip the front edge of the motherboard up and carefully pull the motherboard out of the unit. Place the motherboard in an anti-static bag. To replace the motherboard, carefully tip the rear edge of the motherboard into the unit. Clear connectors away from the edge of the board as you press the motherboard down into place. Replace the 8 Torx 15 screws to secure the motherboard to the unit. replace all connectors to the motherboard.